Kurt Russell's son fighting Nazi zombies in war-torn France? Sign me up. So Overlord is a 2018 zombie horror war movie directed by Julius Avery. It was written by Billy Ray and Mark L. Smith. It stars Wyatt Russell, Jovan Adepo, Mathilde Oliver, Pilo Asbeck, and John Margaro. I gotta be honest, I had really low expectations for this movie. At first, when everybody was talking about it, they were saying it was going to be the fourth movie in the Cloverfield universe, but they decided against that, I guess. Another thing is, I'm a huge zombie fan ever since I was a little kid, ever since I saw Return of the Living Dead at the theaters. My aunt and uncle were nice enough to sneak me in and let me see it in the drive-in. So ever since then, I was hooked on zombies. And then, of course, zombies got cool, and then we got a flood of zombie films. Some of them pretty great, most of them really crap. So is Overlord one of those $5 straight-to-DVD movies you always see in the bargain bins at Walmart, or was it worthy of its theatrical release? So the premise is actually pretty rad. It's about a group of paratroopers from the 101st who had to jump in behind enemy lines to destroy this tower that has a radio communication center in it so that all of the guys coming in for Operation Overlord, aka D-Day, can land safely. Right away, the movie really subverts your expectations. If you thought it was just going to be some kind of dumb zombie versus the military movie, it's a straight up military movie from the get-go, and it comes across really authentically. It shows that nobody's safe in war, and when you think somebody might make it, they might not. When you think somebody's definitely gonna die, they might be, really good. They might rise to the occasion. It even touches on certain aspects of, being behind enemy lines, how some people, even though the town is occupied or whatever, they might not actually be your ally. They could be in cahoots with the Nazis so that they can save their own skin. Whenever it comes to war movies or horror movies, the best ones always have a strong focus on the characters, and everything else is kind of a backdrop. And they really did that here. A lot of people got really butthurt when they talked about the casting before the movie came out because they had a couple of guys who play paratroopers that are black. Yes, okay, at the time, there weren't black paratroopers, they were in their own regiments or whatever, but it's fiction. It's not real. It's an alternate reality. If this was a straight up historical drama, then yes, it should be how it was. You don't retcon, you don't make shit up. But because this is an action horror film that takes place kind of in an alternate reality, and it's inspired by real events, I don't mind it. Which is saying a lot because I am a hardcore stickler for military accuracy in my movies, having served 10 years in the military. But all the story rigmarole out of the way, how is the cinematography? Right away, you notice in this movie that the CGI is top notch. It is so damn good. I didn't see any shots in this movie that had CGI where I was like, man, that looks like crap or that looks really fake. Every shot in this movie that has CGI just looks spectacular. And the fact that most of it was shot practically and then just enhanced with CGI makes it even better. But then again, what do you expect when you have J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot making this movie? This movie was really high end when it came to the cinematography and the camera movements and motion tracking. Like everything is in this movie. They used all of the latest technology to really pull all the stops and to make this a visual feast. The lighting in the movie is awesome, especially during the nighttime shots when you have fire and all of this ambient light. Nothing looks like, oh, that looks staged, that looks like some fake ass lighting. It all looks legit. And the stuff that is kind of weird is supposed to be stylized for certain scenes or certain areas. So the lighting always works. On top of the lighting, the color grading that they chose gives the movie kind of a dungy, lived-in feel, and it really adds to the sickly vibe, that you get in the second half of the movie. There are quite a few oneers in this movie that are really impressive. Oneers are, of course, long takes. The first oneer is really, really good. It's up there with Gravity's. I'd say it's that well done. In short, the movie is gorgeous, but how does it sound? A lot of times when you are in a stressful situation or something really bad happens, you get kind of tunnel vision, everything gets focused on one point of interest, or you just kind of phase out and it takes you a second to come back into it. And to do that effect properly in this movie, they have the audio drop out, kind of like they did in Saving Private Ryan or in Black Hawk Down. And it's quite effective because they don't do it a lot, so when it happens, it works. The audio design in this movie is just awesome, especially if you are a military person or you're a history buff like me. I have so much useless knowledge. So when I watch these movies, I take it all in, and if certain things aren't right, it will really sour my experience and, just turn me off of the movie. The explosions, the guns, all sound like the real weapons, and that's because they're actually using those real weapons in this movie. All of the ambient sounds, the stuff in the background, the directional audio, you can hear, like if there's some Nazis coming from the left side, you hear it over there. Everything is really well executed. Certain areas wouldn't sound the same. If you are in close quarters, a gunshot is going to sound different than in a more spacious room or out in the open air. And they nail it every single time. While I really, really enjoyed the score, I thought it was done really well. I feel like they kind of relied on it a little too much. There are some times where if they would have let it drop down to a really quiet tone or just cut it completely and let, the footsteps and them trying to hear stuff and, all these things come into play like they did in A Quiet Place, I think it would have been much more effective. But as it is, the sound design, mixing, all that stuff is really good. Everything in this movie feels like a legit old school World War II movie, and I like that a lot. Even the opening credits, they're done in black and white, and then they have, this typeface that looks like old stuff you'd see from those World War II movies that were made during and shortly after World War II. You've got these amazing shots with, these aircraft and the ships. Even though they're CGI, they look really good. You've got all this banter between the soldiers. You can see all this fear on their face. You see some of them getting sick. There's just so much detail work in this, on their uniforms. If you look closely at their uniforms, some of the guys' patches look really well done and they're sewed on really nicely, and some of them look kind of crappy, and that's because a lot of times if you got promotion or you got moved to a different unit or whatever, they would just give you your patch and then you would sew it on. So if somebody was really good at sewing, then they'd do their thing and it would look better. If somebody didn't know how, they would just kind of slap it on there so it wouldn't fall off, and it probably looked like crap. Most of the movie takes place at night, and I like that. It gives it a more claustrophobic, ominous feel. The transition from a pretty dope World War II movie to this genre pick to this horror movie is really done well, and it's basically over time, incremental, little things here and there. It doesn't just come and hit you in the face, but it doesn't feel like you didn't see it coming out of nowhere. There's just a really well balanced, shift from one to the other. I know I talked about the details already, but there are a couple other things that I noticed that I really liked. Obviously, you had the clickers, and then you had the flash and the thunder, so people knew that you were, an ally. But on top of that, there are times where you see them shooting the weapons or doing certain movements or doing their salutes or whatever. It looks authentic, and that's because they had a military advisor on the set. And that's why at one point, one of the guys is shooting an M1 Garand. He gets his 8 shots, and that clip ejects. You get that nice sound that everybody loves that the M1 makes, that ting. And I'm pretty obsessive when it comes to anything with ballistics or weaponry or whatever. I actually was counting the shots when he was firing, and when it hit that 8th shot and then the clip popped out, I was like, that's actually what would happen. But that detail work just isn't in their uniforms and how they move and act like military guys. It also is in the set design. The production design in this movie is off the charts. It just feels lived in. It's legit. There's fantastic stunt work that's all practical, and then it's enhanced with CGI, but it never looks like fake CGI. You know how in a Mission Impossible Fallout, he does that amazing skydiving shot, but then the camera turns and you see a CGI storm. It kind of ruins it for you. There's no thing that sticks out that's bad. You don't see any crappy CGI blood. You can tell that these people are actually getting lit in fire, that stuff actually is blowing up, and then they're just making it pop in post. You've got a pretty great villain who's not completely one-dimensional. He's a little bit layered, he's got a little bit of softness to him, but it's not a genuine softness. He's just kind of sadistic, and he's hiding under this really nice guy veneer, this facade. But the thing that really ties all of this amazing work in the production design and the performances and all that stuff together and makes this world feel real is about a half hour of just character building, of immersing you in this world, of making you feel like you are in combat, you're in the enemy territory with these guys. So it's an awesome World War II movie, but is the horror scary? Alright, so some things are predictable in the movie. It's not nearly as bad as most horror films these days, but, you can see a lot of it coming. Some of the scariest parts, some of the best parts in this movie aren't anything to do with the monsters, the zombies, whatever you want to call them. There are the moments where they have to sneak around and use stealth and, you know, try to get around enemy territory and not get shot. They're just super tense and really scary. Are they going to get seen? Are they going to have to fight? And if they do, who's going to die? But it's not all psychological. You do have, you know, some good scary action scenes. You have some really dope body horror. That's all I'm going to say. There's some really good body horror stuff in this movie. And again, they're done practically, which is why they look so kick-ass. The makeup effects in this movie are really good. And then, of course, they went in post and they enhanced them with CGI. They basically did what the Thing prequel tried to do and failed at. These guys nailed it. Just the environment itself is scary, it's spooky, it's tense. I love the creatures in this movie. They're done very subtly with a mix of practical and CGI. The actors playing them really nailed, you know, the physicality of them, the jerkiness. They're really strong, they're genuinely scary, and you feel like if they caught you, they would probably destroy you.
And now the moment we've all been waiting for is here.
We're out of time.
It's Judgment Day.
While there are a couple of dumb decisions put in there to progress the plot forward, they're not nearly as bad as a lot of the horror that I've watched this month, and they are balanced out by this really authentic world, great performances, you know, a super good World War II movie that eventually blends with really cool genre stuff. I really feel like we need more World War II movies and more horror movies that use all of these great new effects and the things that you can do, and they take the time to do it right like this movie did. I feel like this movie really didn't get the attention that it deserved because people went in expecting one thing and they got another. I went in with no expectations, actually kind of low expectations, and I was blown away by it. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that you watch it, and that's why I'm giving Overlord an 8 out of 10.